Hit me with that funky guitar bass line. I love it. Welcome to another episode of Moen After Dark here on the College Football Mafia Network. I am, of course, your host with not the most, Moen, and somebody who's happier than me, Rock and Rant. Bye weeks will do that for you.
Bye weeks make life a lot less stressful, and you can just sit back and watch the tears flow or the cheers flow, depending upon what you're hoping for the outcome to be.
Sure. I did a little rapid reaction last night after the gut punch that was the Oregon-Ohio State game. Again, I'm not going to make any excuses for Ohio State. Oregon was a better team yesterday. We will do our best. We've got a tough stretch coming down here. We got to play Penn State. We got to play Indiana. We got to play Penn State at Penn State, by the way. That's going to be a tough game. But I'm making no excuses. Good for Oregon Ducks. I believe they should be number one in the AP Top 25 poll. And while we're bringing that up, let's go ahead and reveal the Top 25 poll if you haven't seen it yet. Texas remains number one. Oregon moves up to number two. Oregon got 6 first place votes, only 6, after beating the number 2 team in the country. Penn State moves up to number 3 after a thrilling comeback against the Trojans of USC. If you didn't catch any of that game, they were down 14 in the half, came back, took it to overtime. USC misses a kick in overtime. Penn State makes the kick. Congratulations to Penn State. Big win. Clearly, the best in the West is Oregon, and the best in the East is Penn State right now. Ohio State slides to number 4 after their loss. Georgia is at number 5. Here's why I take some exemption, and you'll probably back me up on this. Miami should be ranked in the top 4. They are undefeated.
I would love that to be the case. I'm not as stressed about it as we think, just because I'm fine for them to keep feeling hungry and feeling any perceived slight. I do think that Alabama. I think the Georgia win that keeps them ahead of Miami is which is, I think, a large part to beating Alabama. I mean, losing only to Alabama is diminished the more Alabama plays. And that makes me think that for that reason alone, I have to question whether that was a good loss. I don't know if it is after I watched what Georgia did against Mississippi State yesterday.
Yeah, the last 10 quarters for Alabama really makes me question that number 7 ranking.
Yeah, I think they should have dropped further for sure.
Yeah, they let Georgia get back into that game and take the lead before winning with the Ryan Williams touchdown. They lost to Vanderbilt. It was at Vanderbilt, obviously. But yesterday, if you watched the South Carolina game, or if you saw any of it, fourth quarter, South Carolina goes down and scores, recovers an onside kick. Alabama was very, very lucky not to lose to a South Carolina team that got beat pillar to post the previous week by Ole Miss.
Yep. South Carolina lost that game. Alabama
did not
win
lost.
that game. And I think two things can be concurrently true. The SEC could still be the best conference in college football, and they can also be concurrently completely overrated at the same time.
I think there's a lot more parity across all the major conferences. Speaking of Ole Miss, LSU came back and beat them as well. Another thrilling game yesterday on yesterday's slate. They move up to 8. Iowa State moves to 9 after absolutely drubbing West Virginia at West Virginia.
Please remind me not to pick West Virginia again, even though I reminded myself that 3 weeks ago when I got back on it. Sorry, Coos, and a couple of others out there.
They
killed me.
Yeah, when they whipped on Oklahoma State, I thought, finally, West Virginia woke up. They didn't. Oklahoma State's just really bad this year. Clemson's number 10. I will say this for any gamblers out there, Clemson has they have covered the spread every game they have been favored so far this season. So
in convincing fashion. I don't think there's been a nail biter on that zone other than week 1, which they were not favored anyway.
Yeah. Tennessee again struggled against Florida. They pulled it out, but I don't know what it is with Tennessee. Tennessee, Alabama, and Georgia all kind of struggled this week. I mean, Georgia won, and it was, I don't think they were ever in a chance of losing Georgia. But the fact that
Yeah.
Mississippi State puts 21 points on you, that's
And Tennessee played. I watched that game for all the obvious reasons of just wanting to see what was going on. And there's no transitive thing because except for the last play of a game, you could say if this had happened, then something else, the outcome would have changed. Because for the most part, anything that happens earlier in the game, the whole sequence of plays that happens after completely changes. But Billy Napier, the look on his face at the end of the first half when they got a penalty that basically made them not be able to kick the field goal because of the 10-second runoff was worth its weight in gold. And I think for Billy Napier, they would have been better off getting blown out in that game by Tennessee than losing the way that they did for the narrative, because they played really well. Their defense was not their problem, and the way that they lost heading into overtime was brutal for them.
Yeah, I don't want to talk about penalties causing clock to drain down. Let's avoid that topic for the evening, Rock. Thank you.
I don't think I'm going to do that unless they're really, really nice today.
Notre Dame is in here at number 12. By the way, Army and Navy entered the top 25, and I believe Notre Dame still has to play both of those schools.
They definitely play Navy, but I think you're right about Army. I'll double check it.
I think they play Army too. That's going to be Notre Dame does not have an easy task ahead of it. BYU remains undefeated. They looked really solid. Texas A&M, Boise State. You've got Indiana, Kansas State. They won. They covered against Colorado. So
Notre Dame has a deceptively better schedule in terms of harder games now than it looked like a month or 2 months ago coming up. So they play against Georgia Tech, who can be pesty. I'm not predicting that they lose, but they are, I believe, at Georgia Tech. Then they follow that no bye week with Navy. Then they have a bye week. Then they host Florida State. They jump to Virginia, who's a little bit better than maybe expected, but that's at Notre Dame, so wouldn't expect anything massive there. And then the following week is Army before they play USC. So their schedule, which was kind of jokey before, now has a lot more people in the top 25 than it did a few weeks ago.
Yeah, it definitely looks better. I think ND might have a playoff spot locked up here. Indiana, Kansas State, Ole Miss drops. Mizzou, Pitt. I'm just going to say this right now. Eat shit, Pitt. Eat shit, Pitt. Eat shit, Pitt. I had a 7-game parlay, and Pitt screwed it up for me. I had Pitt at 3.5 points. They give up a late touchdown. They have the ball. There's time remaining. They're in Cal territory. They take a knee. Take a knee. Don't give me the field goal. Don't let me cash in on my 7-leg parlay. Forever now and forever, Pitt. I hate you. I hate you. I hate you.
I think Pitt just lost their backdoor path to the Big Ten.
I will rally against that wherever it be. I hate Pitt. I put it on Twitter. Eat shit, eat shit, eat shit. Definitely you eat shit, Pitt. They got to win. They didn't cover. They messed up my parlay. I will never forgive them. Then we've got SMU, Illinois, aforementioned Army, Michigan, which is still in there for some reason, and Navy. So there you go. There's your top 25, y'all. And we'll get that off the screen here. And we will go ahead. We talked about our picks for the week. Let's go ahead and put these up here. Not so good a week for you and Moen.
I'm a tie with my three of the rest of us. I am fine with maintaining my very small 2-game lead over Pickles.
The only game that I got right was the game that everybody picked BYU. So BYU, thank you for the win. I mentioned it last night, beginning of the season, this far into the season. Who would have thought of all the teams that would be unbeaten? Bombers team, the BYU Cougars, remain undefeated. Utah is ass, my dude. And Ohio State lost a close game to Oregon. But congratulations. Yeah, I see you, Earl. Congratulations on your Cougars. Thank you for giving me a win this week. I needed it, obviously. because the rest of my wins did not come in.
Yeah, this was the week because I picked Oregon to win the title in the preseason prediction. So I guess I don't know that I went as far as to assume that they would have or would not beat Ohio State. I thought they would eventually beat Ohio State, but not necessarily this week. But heading into the season, I wasn't sure that Miami would be undefeated, because I still didn't know how bad or good Florida was going to be to kick off the season. After that, I thought we'd coast for a second. But yeah, I would have expected Ohio State and Utah to be the most likely schools among the favorite schools in the Mafia crew to be undefeated. But most of the schools that would have had just one loss are still fine. Ohio State's more than just fine.
Let's say hello to some people here. Ryan Willie, the Evil Badger, says, Rock and Rant, Becky Go Huskies, Sergeant Pickles. Wisconsin made Rutgers look like Swiss cheese.
That is 100% true.
Yeah, if you didn't catch last week's Big Ten Mafia show, Becky and Pickles said Wisconsin was quote unquote trash. I stuck up for the Badgers. I
have avoided picking Rutgers, and I finally got into the zone of like I'll pick them. West Virginia is one that I stopped picking for the reasons that we all know, because I thought they turned around. And Rutgers, I was like, all right, they're starting to do stuff. They pushed against Nebraska and the spreads I picked with the week before. And then as soon as I'm like, all right, I'm going to go with them because I don't know what's going on with Wisconsin's offense. Wisconsin acts like they're a machine on offense and makes Greg Schiano look really bad.
Big win for the Badgers. And we'll just wait till Ryan, make sure you tune in tomorrow at 8 p.m. I'm sure Becky and Sergeant Pickles will have a lot to say about their Washington team's performance against Iowa. And maybe you can go in there and needle them a bit about Wisconsin. Leave it to Washington to make Iowa look like an offensive powerhouse.
If they only knew, they would have recruited some more Washington players and maybe injected that DNA.
Wisconsin took out the trash the past 2 games. Nathan Campbell says hello. Good to see you, Nathan. Joaquin Morales is here. How about them Devils? Yeah, the Sun Devils look fantastic. I watched that game. Obviously, I had skin in that game as I had picked Utah. But congratulations to the Arizona State Sun Devils. They looked very good. And I will say I definitely like the helmets.
I was just going to say their helmets were like one of the best helmets I've seen in the last 2 years.
Yes, they are very. I don't even know what you would call that, a color fade or, I don't know, but it looked dope.
It looked like somebody painted, their Harley motorcycle fuel tank color kind of thing with that kind of shine to it. It was excellent.
He is taking care of mom, and our kid turned 16 today. Tell him I said happy birthday. A little busy. We'll listen later. I got you though, Moen. Smash that like button, folks. Yes, if you guys could smash that like button. Give us a share us to your family and friends. Leave comments if you're watching on demand like Joaquin Morales is. Those always help us in the algorithm. If you would like to support the channel and help us keep the lights on, here you can go ahead and leave us a super chat, become a member, gift a membership. You can do all that by hitting the cash button down by the chat window. You can do all those good things through there. We've given out a lot of free memberships for the month, so unfortunately I cannot give out free memberships. We tapped out. Bob Swanger says, good evening, CFM. Good to see you, Bob. And then Bama will always get special treatment. They are barely a top 20 team, if we are being honest. See, their defense. I think you're muted, Rock.
Sorry about that. I was like, yeah, it's like buzz your defense, man. It's really, really ugly. The thing with Kalen DeBoer is I think he's a great coach, but he has now put the distrust into Alabama fans, and it's going to be very hard for that to ever go away. He is an excellent coach. I think it'll all work out, but that's the sequence of games in the last few weeks, so soon after Saban left, is going to be something that's always lingering in the background, at least for the next few years, till he completely overwhelms it with something positive, like delivering a couple titles.
Sheep and Wolf's Clothing says, who does everyone want for their new head coach? I'm happy with my head coach.
I'm pretty copacetic right now.
Yeah. I understand people say Ryan Day can't win the big game, but you know what? He doesn't lose the games he's not supposed to lose. And Urban Meyer and Jim Tressel both had a habit of doing that. Arizona State, not a good team yet, just playing hard and physical, finding ways to win. Go Devil, baby. Yeah, Antoine, we talked about that. No idea how, but we have the cannon. Congratulations on the cannon, Illini, Ted. We still have the Illy Buck,
amazing,
though.
Ted. That was amazing.
We still have the Illy Buck, though. Marcus Williams says, good game last night. Yeah, there were a lot of good games last night. Paul Lubke. I hope I pronounced that last name right. How about those Cyclones? Yeah, big one for Iowa State. Iowa State and BYU are the cream of the crop in the Big 12.
For sure. Dominating victory.
My Badgers looking way better. Yeah, Derek, we kind of touched on that with Ryan's comment. Badgers look good. May college football never die. Hear, hear. LSU's loss to USC is terrible. How are they 8? SEC bias, guys. SEC bias. And we talked about this a couple weeks ago. That SEC bias is for a reason. They have dominated the sport of college football for the past 2 decades. Until somebody comes in there and knocks them off that pedestal, they're always going to get that preferential treatment.
Yeah. Plus, I don't think SC is a terrible team. They are terrible at finishing games, though.
They are. You can make a case that they could possibly, outside of one really bad play, be undefeated. I mean, they missed a tackle at Michigan that won Michigan the game. They took them to overtime yesterday. They obviously shouldn't let them get 14 unanswered points in the third quarter, but they took them to overtime and they just missed the kick.
I still wouldn't want to play USC if I didn't have to at USC on my schedule the rest of the year. It's not an easy win. No one's going in there and thinking they have an easy win ahead of them. And they played a lot tougher, I thought, against Penn State. They weren't as dominated in the trenches as I thought they had moments with against a couple of the other schools, but still, Lincoln Riley still isn't closing it. And it's somewhat defense, but it's also them not putting up the offensive numbers that he should be expecting from this team.
Daniel Gygax says, rank Vandy, you coward. Sure, I'm for it. Moen, where is Oklahoma? Oklahoma's in the toilet. And if you had to sit through that game yesterday, make sure you contact ESPN and ABC and charge them at least minimum wage for watching that shit. Brent Venables, I don't get it. I don't get it. I mean, you let Dylan Gabriel walk because you didn't want to lose Jackson Arnold. You benched Jackson Arnold for a true freshman. Your true freshman didn't do shit yesterday. Could not do anything. And yet you would not bench him to bring Jackson Arnold back. At halftime when you were down, bring him back.
He may be a coach when it's all said and done. You know, he might have been a good coordinator, but not a good program leader, despite the early settings. And look, I think preseason, everyone would have kind of expected that Texas was going to beat Oklahoma and that Oklahoma was going to have a hard ride in the SEC, but you still can't lose that way. Not in that game.
Just embarrassing. Absolutely embarrassed. And, you know, they had their opportunities early. What an awful game to watch. Red River Rivalry needs another trophy. That small golden cowboy hat that everyone puts on. Oh, my. Tony Larson says, SMU, great ad for the ACC and very affordable. Sure. I say
definitely looking a lot better than it did. It looks better than it does on the ledger in terms of dollars, but in terms of their execution and their performance so far, you got to give them credit. They've done what they need to do.
Yeah, I would say this. Why don't you guys keep, since you're at 17, let's keep SMU and kick out Pitt.
And Oklahoma would technically be ranked 29th right now. They are still in others receiving votes for an earlier question.
How in the hell they're receiving votes is beyond me.
There's a lot of reporters in the SEC and in Oklahoma.
Earl Carr, hey Moen, how about my Cougars? Yeah, good job by the Cougars. Glenn Lumen says, good morning from the Philippines. Go Cougs. Yeah, a lot of Cougs are happy here.
Cougs look good in on the Fox pregame show. Good showing.
Yeah, I was a little surprised that Fox wasn't at the Oregon-Ohio State game, but then I understand that they had concerns because it's kind of a crowded campus there, from what I understand. So that's fine. We let ESPN go ahead and promote the biggest Big Ten matchup of the week. Speaking of which, I don't know if anybody caught this. All of the three Big Ten matchups, the top three this week, involved East Coast versus West Coast teams. Washington at Oregon, Penn State at USC, and Ohio State at Oregon. And teams traveling more than 2 time zones, I think it is now 3 wins and 10 losses.
That is the number. Though it is a little bit, it may be the trend, but it also could be the noise based off of, upsets. There weren't, the favorites kind of won in, or the traveling team was an underdog to begin with. So that's substantial. But we'll see. It could actually be the trend. It wouldn't be surprising if it turns out to be the trend.
East Coast, West Coast rivalry. Laura Weiss says, hey, y'all, good to see you. Laura, hey, Texas Tech Red Raiders are sneakily, they're not, they're going to pop out and get somebody. This will show here. Thank you. Becky and Sergeant Pickles also said Rutgers was better than Iowa. Mona Vision, you need to educate those two. I told them not to sleep on Rutgers, and Rutgers beat them. And boy, I don't know. Iowa looked like an offensive juggernaut on Saturday. They're going to have some questions to be answered tomorrow night. I don't know if I'm going to be there tomorrow night, so I don't get Columbus Day off. So, but I will take it off from that. Give myself a little break. And by the way, the Oregon Ducks hat, it is on the way. I will wear the Oregon Ducks hat. It's sitting at my local post office. I said, why is it saying it's going to get delivered Tuesday if it's there at the post office? And I remembered we don't have mail service on Columbus Day, Indigenous Peoples Day, whatever you want to call it.
You can wear it on Friday night just ahead of that massive matchup of Oregon at Purdue.
Purdue, yeah. If Oregon goes in there and loses to Purdue, boy, oh boy. Time to give the keys to the team to Wilson. Yeah, Cam Rising looked absolutely terrible. Glenn Hanna, Oregon fan, thrilling win that kept my adrenaline going all through this morning. I would have bet the Ohio State University to win, hence the electricity. Not perfect game for both teams, but wild. Yeah. Oregon was a better team that night. I'm not going to make any excuses for Ohio State. Better team that night. Need to play better. That's Will Howard said after the game, if anything, he hopes it lights a fire under some people. Gets them to perform better. And I'm looking at you, Jack Sawyer and JTT. You performed in that Missouri game. You had NFL draft salivating to take you in the first round, and you have regressed. So, Mick Stevens says, go Frogs. So go Frogs. Keep Chopping says, big game Ryan Day, 2-4 in bowls, 1-3 versus Michigan, 1-7 versus top 5, 0-3 versus SEC. You're right. How many times has Ryan Day lost to Purdue? How many times has Ryan Day lost to Iowa? How many times has Ryan Day lost to Michigan State? How many times has he lost to Indiana? I see what you're saying, but keep in mind we lost that game by 1 point. We could have won that game, you know.
Yeah,
it was management.
You know, I think I saw somewhere that it was the first 1 point game between top 5 schools in 20 years. There've been overtime games, but it was literally 1 point game.
It's 1 point game. One of those bowl games was also a 1 point game against a Georgia that was favored by 14.5 points over them. So You know, he also went to a national championship game. Not a lot of coaches can say that. So yeah, there are issues. 1-3 versus Michigan, definitely the biggest issue right there. 2-4 in bowls. Some of them bowls you have to. The Missouri game last year, he didn't have a quarter. He had to put in a true freshman quarterback against a top 10 Missouri team. So you got to cut him some slack. You got to put these things into context. You can't just look at the numbers. My brother is an ardent fire Ryan Day. I am an ardent don't fire Ryan Day because I like to beat teams like Indiana and Purdue and Michigan State. And I think he'll get over that Michigan hump this year. He better get over that Michigan hump this year. Tony Losh knows a complete collapse by us, especially our defense. I don't know why, but Walter seems to be in the head of our coaches. Yeah, but you guys won the game. That's the important thing.
Yeah, you got to take steps like that. Like you have, schools, even the schools that have been at the top for a while have moments like that. But when you're coming back up and the program's rebuilding, there's an argument that a game like that is a both good wake up call, but also good like putting your DNA into like an accelerator for the future. I can almost have a question for Moen. Really, is I actually think Ohio State probably wins that game at Oregon if they had some better preseason, pre-Oregon games on the schedule. Like if there had been a little bit more competition. Some of that's related to conference scheduling, which is out of Ohio State's control, but the ones that are more in control, like I wish, I think if you guys had a bigger tune-up game that would have at least been competitive a little bit longer, it would have been helpful for the other night.
I don't know. Ohio State really played sharp last night. Will Howard was very sharp last night. Just a lot of it came down to the defense. The one back, Denzel Burke, got exposed. He bit twice on a stutter step. I mean, you think you would fall for it once, you would learn about it the second time, but he did it again. I will say this, as much as I want to give respect to Oregon, the player who spat on the Ohio State player needs to be suspended. Absolutely. Disgusting. Do not spit on other people. I don't care what was said, does not warrant spitting in someone's face.
Yeah, completely agree.
The teams West Virginia has lost to are 18-0, and next a 5-1 K-State. Ouch. True, you got to put it in context. Moen, is it too early to think it might be Iowa State versus BYU for the Big 12 title? Absolutely. Absolutely too early. You've still got Kansas State out there. You've still got Texas Tech out there. You've still got Arizona State out there. There's still
these guys. Any one of these guys, I think, are likely.
Yeah, you still got a lot of competitors in the Big 12. A lot of parity. So I would not go ahead and book your tickets for that game yet. Did you see that crazy ending at the end of the North Carolina Georgia Tech game? I caught it on College Football Final.
And I just heard about it. I meant to go back and watch it. Like, what exactly happened?
I just caught the end of it. So, and then I caught Mac Brown's comments, and then I had to change the channel for a bit. If you didn't know, one of the players on the team who was battling cancer passed away. Unfortunately, I think it was revealed during the game. So, terrible news.
And Georgia Tech.
Yeah, Georgia Tech. There you go. This is a drink for all the people who have to work on Columbus Day. And this is a drink for everybody who's got Columbus Day off. Woo! Tony Washington says Ohio State fans don't kick Columbus Day off. Call your congressman. Yeah, my congressman ain't going to do dick.
He just got to call your state house. You got to call your state house, and they won't do it either.
Yeah, that's not happening. Federal holiday only. How did Miami do? They were on bye this week.
They were on bye, yet I know they had a players only meeting to like get their act together, but at least they weren't sending players weren't going to the Turks and Caicos on a bye week, like a player from another school.
Yes. If you didn't hear the defensive tackle for Florida State, I'm trying to remember the gentleman's name here. Let me look.
Darryl Jackson.
There you go. Thank you. Daryl Jackson is on an island enjoying his life. He's went to Turks and Caicos for the bye week. I mean, they've been playing like they've been on vacation all season. Why not? Why not?
I think he literally
away.
went to Turks and Caicos so that he could totally set you up for that line.
Yeah, it's hey, look, if you can afford it, man, I guess. But if I'm an NFL scout and I look at that, I just say that's bad work ethic. Bob Swinger says, Moen, you are right. That Oregon player should be suspended. Yeah, at least suspend him a game or two. You don't need the Big Ten to get involved in that. That should be something that Dan Lanning does at a program level.
And if he doesn't, then maybe he's buds with Mike Gundy.
Yeah. I do want to give credit to James Franklin. I don't know if you saw this yesterday. The Penn State players tried to plant the "We Are" Penn State flag in the middle of the USC emblem on the 50-yard line. And James Franklin immediately went over there and pulled it and rolled it down and scolded his players for attempting to do it.
No, the one I saw happen yesterday, and I could get the jersey wrong, but I'm pretty sure that the Texas players did something with like a Baker Mayfield jersey in the middle of the field and their flag. So
well, Baker Mayfield had it coming. Fuck that guy. But very classy move by James Franklin. I just wanted to shout him out if you hadn't seen it. Yeah, he did. He scolded his players. He took the flag down. Very classy of him to do. I can understand Ohio State fan frustration with Day, considering the talent advantage they have, different expectations than the rest of us. Sure, but all those losses are to equally talented teams. You know, yeah, you're going to complain about a 1-point loss to Oregon. Dylan Gabriel looked fantastic yesterday. Running and passing. He was a better quarterback. Will Howard also looked very good yesterday, but Dylan Gabriel just was able to do more. Can't let opportunities go. Glenn Hanna says Trayshawn Holden issued a statement of apology about an hour ago. He does deserve suspended. I lost respect for him. He's a young man and needs to learn he's not invincible. An apology is a good start. I tend to agree with you. Just Dan Lanning needs to tell him, young man, you got to sit for 1 or 2 games. Look, you're not gonna lose any sleep sitting that kid against Purdue. You're just not. Clay Johansson says GB and Big Ten.
That's a new way of tackling that one, Moen.
Yeah, I just said GB. That could be anything.
It could be.
He should spend a few nights in jail, honestly. I'm not going to go that far. Spirit of competitiveness. Okay.
Yeah, that's look, I mean, I know you could make a justification that it's assault in some form, but you know, there are actual people who've done real legitimate crimes that get freaking community service for a lot more than what he did, as disgusting as it was.
Yeah, I mean, I could think of a certain running back who drove drunk and didn't have to sit for a single play.
Yeah, I wonder what school that would have been and what coach.
Go Lions having a beatdown of Dallas, but we lost touch with a broken leg. Yeah, I saw that. That was a nasty injury.
Yeah, that was rough. I mean, they're definitely kicking their butt. I had to turn. I am not good with those kind of things. I definitely turned away. It was a good time to take the dog for a walk when that went on the screen.
Yeah, and Hutch was having a hell of a season. He was on his way to Defensive Player of the Year possibly, but tough break for Aiden. Hope he heals up properly. Even if he is a Michigan man, I'm not going to hold that against him. Jail, settle down, chopping. Tony Losh and Clay, a very tough loss for the Lions today, Hutchinson. Yeah. He was on his way to Defensive Player of the Year, I think. He was, leading in sacks. I think he was the sack leader for the NFL so far this season.
Well, hopefully, I'm sure some of his pain will be eased tomorrow when Stephen A. Smith clowns on the Cowboys in the morning, which is his thing.
Yeah, if anybody still watches Stephen A. Smith.
It gets spread across social. I don't expect people to do it, but Cowboys clowning always goes viral anyway, because you either love the Cowboys or you hate the Cowboys. So
I do want to give a shout out to Caitlin Olsen, who was a guest picker on ESPN Game Day. I had no idea she was an Oregon Duck. which further makes the joke that she's a giant bird hilarious. Shut
I
your
thought she was
bird
pretty
mouth,
funny.
D. So, but I will say this: Pat McAfee has really on College Game Day. I just mute him when he starts talking. He has his chair higher than everybody else on that show. It's like he just can't wait to show off that stupid belt buckle. He's got like a big Texas rodeo belt buckle, and he's like jumping up and down. Look at my belt buckle. Shut up, Pat. 13-9. Nate Campbell says, "Who do you think is the first coach gone?"
It's a good one. Like the one I'm most confident in going is Billy Napier, but I don't know if he'll necessarily be first.
Sonny Dykes goes first. I think Sonny Dykes goes first.
Or like Trent Dilfer at UAB, something like G5-ish.
Yeah, I think Sonny Dykes. I think his time is up. His time is up. They've just too much of a dumpster fire going on there. With teams getting to 6 wins already, can't wait for bowl season. That's correct. 6 wins get you in a bowl. I was impressed with the Big Ten stat I saw last night when it showed Oregon only allows 17 points per game, which is great for us, but ranked 9th in the Big Ten in that stat. Well,
you have to factor in Iowa's offense.
Yes, that's true.
Except for yesterday.
Iowa's bringing up the average for everybody. Thanks, Iowa, for doing your part finally. For shame, Washington. For shame. How have they announced where the Big Noon Crew will be next Saturday? I don't know. I do not know. Let's see what the slate of games for next Saturday would be.
There's some good ones, and there's some that you would have thought were going to be good. The Friday game, like the biggest one, you got FSU at Duke, which is for tier zone. Oregon, Purdue, we mentioned, and then you got Oklahoma State at BYU.
I think those
Fresno,
are all not competitive games.
I think they're all not competitive games, but one game on every Friday has been insane. So it would be the first Friday that hasn't happened if that's the case.
Oregon, so help me God, if you roll into West Lafayette and get spoiler makered, I will never forgive you.
You got you got Miami at Louisville on Saturday. Alabama's at Tennessee. Notre Dame, Georgia Tech, we mentioned, ranked unranked. Michigan at Illinois. Let's see. Trying to look for any big ranking.
Georgia, Texas.
Georgia, Texas. A&M is at Mississippi State. Not that should be a big thing. LSU at Arkansas could be a good game. Arkansas has had some moments so far this year. UGA, Texas is the late game. Kansas State at West Virginia, as mentioned earlier. UCF and Iowa State would have seemed to be a good game earlier in the year, but UCF has looked horrific the last few weeks. The Misery Bowl of Kentucky at Florida. UNLV is at Oregon State, which is just a big game in terms of UNLV needing to keep winning to have a shot at taking down Boise State when they match up in a couple of weeks in terms of the G5 stuff. And TCU's at Utah. There's obviously several more. I'm just trying to look at the ones that have potential ramifications on seedings or conferences stuff.
Yeah, that Utah game, TCU-Utah game is interesting. Like I said, if Utah wins that game, Sonny Dykes may be out of there. I don't know that he lasts the season.
Yeah, is there any sneaky good game that I'm missing? I don't think so. Well, Baylor. Well, not. I'm thinking Baylor, but it's Baylor this year. Baylor's at Texas Tech.
That's a tough game out, though.
Yeah.
Usually
Colorado at Arizona.
That should be a win for Colorado, but
it should, right? USC's got to come back and travel across country, but they're playing at Maryland, so they should be able to navigate that based on how Maryland looked this week. NC State gets embarrassed, they have to travel to Cal. I bet you that they get a beating, actually, based off of how they played this year. Shout out to Greg Flugar's preseason ACC pick.
By the way, Flugar picked Ohio State, y'all, and they lost. Need I say more?
Greg the Cooler in full effect. But his Minnesota Gophers, man, USC and UCLA in back-to-back weeks in comeback fashion in both.
Yeah, UCLA. I didn't understand. I watched the end of that game. I didn't understand where they were coming from. You guys can't run the clock out. You should have went out there and try and get at least a first down. Of course, on third down, they did pass the ball on third down, but they had 2 runs for nearly nothing. Yeah, I think by the time PJ Fleck still had 2:40 left on the clock, taking over for his final drive. Was able to use those timeouts quite well.
They did not do good. They were in the run, further nominees for the 2024 Mario Cristobal Clock Management Award, which we got. Ryan Day, Billy Napier, and Deshaun Foster, to me, all deserved the entry into it yesterday in different forms.
Moen, I hear you are wearing an Oregon hat because of the loss. Do you wear a Michigan hat if the results are the same? Why would I wear a Michigan hat if Oregon beat Ohio State? That doesn't make any sense. I got you, Stormy Cyclone. No, I'm not going to wear a Michigan hat. Not now. Not ever. I am collecting 17 out of 18 Big Ten hats. That is the one hat that will not enter my abode. Clay Johansson says Florida. He thinks the Florida coach goes. Purdue's coach first, then Florida, but UAB and TCU coach is close too. I mentioned
a good call.
Yeah, I mentioned last week I thought Jason Candle from Toledo was going to take over that program. Toledo gives him a big extension. He's a 14-point favorite and loses 30-15 to Buffalo.
Yeah, that's their second crap the bed moment of the season when they shouldn't have.
Yeah. If Tech has more fans at the game in Fort Worth and wins, I think the patience will wear very thin with Sonny. I think the patience already worn out. I think that we can pretty much give Garrett Riley the credit for that one season.
It's not the same thing because I don't think he's necessarily going to get fired because I don't know what he would do to get fired. But shout out to Mark Stoops, Kentucky coach, complaining that Vanderbilt's NIL program is better than Kentucky's. Like Vanderbilt's coach got there in 2020. I don't know if that's really complaining or more actually a confession, right? Like what have you and your AD been doing to make sure that Kentucky, a blue blood program in the basketball side with state school and a lot of alumni, what have you been doing to make sure that Vanderbilt couldn't eclipse you in a year or two?
Yeah, it's tough for Kentucky because one, the NIL program. Two, they've got a lot of competition for recruits. They try and recruit Southern Ohio and Western Pennsylvania. That's tough recruiting when you're going up against Ohio State, Penn State, Michigan.
For sure, but Vanderbilt, it's not, you can drive between Nashville and Lexington. It's not like they're not like 7 states away difference. Granted, you might have like some players who are attracted to Vanderbilt from an academic standpoint, but that's not really what's going to massively drive your football program. I'm not saying it's an easy thing for Kentucky to do. I'm just saying getting Matt or just mentioning Vanderbilt's NIL program is not a good look.
Yes, not a good look just sour grapes. Looks like Big Noon will be at Illinois, the Illinois-Michigan game. There you go. That'll be fun. And who comes up from the D5 to take them jobs? I think if TCU fires Sonny Dykes, I think they go and get Garrett Riley away from Clemson.
Yeah, I'm not so sure that a lot of I think you have to really do great in the G5 to get that call up to. It depends upon what school level it is, right? As far as schools that are letting people go that are already P4, if it's a lower performing program historically, I think that you can get full G5s. But I think it's going to be harder and harder for the upper echelon, or at least perceived upper echelon of P4 schools to pick somebody from G5 with the way you have to do things in an NIL era. I think it's more likely to poach from other P4 schools, to be honest.
Yeah. Keep Chopping says, have a hunch Purdue will test Oregon. Don't put money on that hunch. You'd probably lose that. I don't even know what the spread is. The spread's probably going to be 36.5. It is the 100th anniversary of the opening of Memorial Stadium in Champaign, so there will be lots of stuff going on already. If you want to go to that, Illini Ted, just let me know, and I will send you a picture of the Illybuck trophy to hold up. Baylor should fire their coach too. I think that's going to happen as well, Clay, but I think they're going to wait till the end of the season. Antoine Code says Flugs picked ASU twice this year and they won. Of course, his intel was not great, and he wanted to switch his pick to the other team at the last minute. Even a blind sow can find an acorn. Keep chopping. UCLA has a very good run defense. Better get the Greek squirt gun going. You say that, but I think Rutgers has a better record than Minnesota this year. I don't know. Stormy Cyclone says Flugar picked West Virginia also. Glad the cold front continues. Does. It gets chilly when Greg makes his pick. Greg did not pick the Gophers game the last 2 weeks, and both were wins. I'm going to start picking the Gophers. He's going to jinx Ohio State. I'm going to jinx Minnesota.
It's getting fierce. There's a lot of elbows getting thrown.
That's right. Does Foster have any former coaches on his staff? Part of Walter's problem has been he didn't hire any former coaches, and he gets out-coached a lot. The only
Eric Bieniemy on his staff.
Yeah, but Bieniemy's never been a head coach.
But in terms of clock management on offense.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Eric Bieniemy is not exactly conservative on offense either, but you got to live with what you got. Another Tech alum, Garrett. Yeah. But look, I think you got to give Garrett Riley all the credit in the world for that season they went to the national championship game. As soon as he left, that program pretty much fell apart. UNLV coaches made that program good, and in my lifetime, I don't think UNLV has ever been good in football.
I don't think they were ever ranked in the top 25 until the last few weeks, if I'm not mistaken.
And by the way,
Then again, the NIL program issue is a thing.
The NIL program at UNLV. Interesting enough, if you didn't catch that, the Mountain West Conference has agreed to relocate their conference offices to Las Vegas. That was part of the agreement to get UNLV to sign on board. Rutgers versus UCLA, battle for the cellar. No, this is who gets to guard the cellar door. Purdue is clearly in the cellar.
New Brunswick Bowl.
What do you guys think of the new AP poll? Agree or disagree with the teams and rankings? We talked about this at the beginning of the show, Stormy. I think Oregon should be number 1. I think Miami should be in the top 5. But I don't have a vote.
Yeah, I think that Texas Tech not being ranked is questionable now at this point. Anyone that's in their top 3 or 4 of their respective conferences in the P4, granted they may only be a couple of games into conference play, likely should be higher up. Like Texas Tech isn't in the AP poll, is 32nd at this point. They probably should be higher up, and I do think that Alabama should have fallen more, and that you're going to have to start to question the value of the Georgia win over Alabama, because as a one-loss team, you start doing that process just the same way as SMU looks better now because BYU looks a lot better. Their one loss has gotten better over time. Georgia's one loss has gotten worse the last 2 weeks.
Right, and that's, I think you can put that towards the Texas Tech ranking. They have a very bad loss.
For sure.
And it was a substantial loss. It was not a close game.
What I'm talking about, whether you're in the top 25, not whether you're number 7.
Yeah, definitely. Keep chopping says should make Rutgers UCLA a trophy game. Maybe use a mini dumpster. I thought you were a Rutgers fan. I don't know what you want from Greg Schiano. I mean, you could go back to the Chris Ash years if you would want. I'm sure Chris needs the job and can use the money.
It sounds like Chapin wants to see whether Shiano has ever seen the Pine Barrens episode of The Sopranos.
Yeah, the Russian that is never addressed again, whether he lived or died. Actually, he was a Czechoslovakian interior designer. Iowa State should be ahead of Alabama. Hey, guess what? If you're in the Big 12, you're always going to get hurt by the SEC Big 10 bias. Same thing for the ACC. Look at Miami. Miami's undefeated, and they've got teams with losses in front of them. The South Lake Carroll coach will probably take the Baylor job. Okay. I'm not familiar with that coach.
That's definitely getting deeper, but I'm assuming it's like some gigantic Texas school that draws 25,000 people a week on Friday night.
Yeah, Immaculate showed me some of those Texas stadiums that just ungodly for high school football.
I know the California high schools that matter. I know the Florida high schools. I just know that like half of Texas high schools matter, and the other half also matter.
Yeah, I mean we don't put a lot of money into our stadiums in Ohio because we put that money into the players' pocket. That's all I'm going to say. Laura Weiss says, wish Taj Brooks had been available in Pullman. Well, he's running on all cylinders now. So, all right. I think we're going to wrap this up. Let me get one more comment here. Still love Schiano. Just roughed after that thrashing from the Badgers. Sure. It's tough. It's tough. But Schiano's a guy who can do a lot with a little. Clay Johansson wants to let Chris Peterson get a West Coast job. I don't think he wants the job. I think he's very happy sitting in that studio.
Yeah, I don't think the issue is that he can't get a job, is that he just doesn't want one.
He doesn't want one, yeah. But hey, there might be an opening in Alabama soon. Who knows?
That's definitely not a job that the guy doesn't want to get. The 25 jobs that are offered to him every year to stay closest to home is going to go take.
Yeah, we can talk about Ryan Day not winning the big game, but he never lost to Vanderbilt. I'll say that.
Hey Mo, a quick one before we wrap. Like for who do you think? You know, we're at midseason now. Is there like besides the obvious, I was like saying Florida State, who's like your most surprising team and your most disappointing team?
Besides Florida State?
Yeah, it almost feels like that's a layup if I say that, so to make it think a little bit more outside of the box.
Wow. I'd have to say Alabama. I understand. I know it's Kalen DeBoer. He's a new coach, but I know they had an exodus. Some kids left, but they kept an awful lot of talent there. They were recruiting strong. He brought in all these great coaches surrounding him. They lost to Vanderbilt. They almost blew the game against Georgia. And, South Carolina lost that game.
Right.
South Carolina had the ball, and they could have got into field goal range. It was just, I'd have to say Alabama.
Yeah, for me, I to me, it's like kind of just the state away is moving over to Ole Miss. When they went all in with how much they spent to get that roster into the state, to lose 2 games and very likely being on the outside looking in for the playoffs. Like I didn't really imagine a scenario where I didn't necessarily think that they would get to the SEC championship game, but I was pretty positive they were going to be a college football playoff entrant, and now that's looking a little bit dicey. And on the positive, most surprising team for me, definitely, is a BYU, just because I had predicted them so low. It's Coach of the Year worthy so far.
Yeah. Clay Johansson also brings up Kansas. Kansas is another good one too. Well, a lot of us had Kansas competing for a Big 12 title, and Kansas may finish dead last in that conference. They got to fire that OC. They got to fire that OC.
Coaching decisions matter, and coaching departures matter.
All right, Clay. Pitt on the good side. I like their QB and BYU. If you didn't catch the early part of the stream, we're not talking about Pitt anymore on this show. Pitt is now foreboding. They screwed up a 7-leg parlay for me.
What you missed, Clay, was that Moen said that prior really secretly behind closed doors and third-party talks that Pitt actually had a fast track to the Big Ten that nobody knew about. But the way that they screwed up his 17 parlay by, blowing the 3.5-point spread essentially closed the door to them, and they're, G5 bound.
I'm just saying, when it's a 3.5-point spread, you're on the Cal 15 with a couple seconds left to go. You're down by 2. Kick the field goal, guys. Come on, help the gamblers out there out. Who can you? I know you're worried that you might screw up the field goal and they'll run it back. Don't worry about that. Kick the field goal, Pitt. Kick the field goal. All right, we're gonna get ready to get out of here. What's your one for the road? Rockin'
Now we're past for the most part, there's not a lot of out of conference games left on anyone's schedule. Every game matters, and the chaos will continue to blow up college football. I'm looking forward to seeing, now that conference play is a regular thing for everybody, what happens in these closing weeks. I think if Miami personally gets past Louisville, they're in good shape for the rest of the season until they hopefully meet Clemson or whoever might be in the championship game. But we will see. Players' meetings are scary when teams have those. Sometimes they're good, sometimes they're bad. There's a lot of schools having players-only meetings right now, even when they're winning.
Are they having a players-only meeting at Turks?
They did. They had one just to address why they were blowing those.
On the island at Turks and Caicos.
Oh, I think there's a single player only meeting people on that island for sure.
Okay. I thought that was part of an NIL package or something.
I'm sure it's part of an NIL package, but
Jan Hulk says USC is the most disappointing for him. Keep Chopping says Army for good teams. They are destroying folks. Yes, they are. They have also been very good about covering the spread. Clay Johansson says Iowa State too. Mr. Ed Wayner gets here a little late, but I will put this up here. Hello, everyone. My biggest surprise is Army and Navy being undefeated. I sense Navy has a good chance of beating Notre Dame and eliminating them from the college football playoff. Biggest disappointment outside of Florida State is USC. We talked about this a little earlier, Ed. Notre Dame also has Army on the schedule. So don't count out Army in that game either. But my one for the road, love them Buckeyes, win or loss. Gotta love your team. A lot of Buckeye fans out there started last night into this morning bitching and moaning and bitching and moaning. You lost by 1 point on the road to a very good Oregon team. Not the end of the world. You didn't lose to Purdue. You didn't get blown out in Kinnick. You lost to a very good team on the road. Yes, there were clock management issues. Yes, there were bad calls and no calls on both sides of the ball. Stop making excuses. Oregon beat you. Time to come home. Figure shit out. You got a tough schedule down the rest of the way. Get it locked down. Get your rematch in Indianapolis.
And they didn't feel compelled to tear down the goalposts and march them down to a river. So that means they had more respect for you.
That's true, but they had that duck crowd surfing. I wouldn't have supported that duck. I'd have pulled him down. Anyway, just as programming reminder, tomorrow at 8 p.m., you got Becky and Pickles on the Big Ten Mafia show. Tuesday, you've got Nate, Wild You, and Daniel Gygax on the Big 12 Mafia show. And there will probably be a Wednesday show that I will do this week. And then I will see you guys again on Friday for the Big Freaking Friday show. Thanks, everybody, for coming out and watching. We appreciate it. Now, I'm going to leave to go be disappointed by my professional football team, the Cincinnati Bengals. Peace out, everybody. Have a great evening.